Hi, welcome back to the channel. Today I just wanted to talk about playing Latin jazz on an electric, which is quite a common thing to do. Just on my channel, I tend to explore and focus on the nylon guitar, the finger style, classical Spanish flamenco, Latin jazz styles. And but in reality, Latin jazz and Latin music is played a lot on electric guitars, and I also enjoy playing electric guitar. And recently I just bought this gorgeous guitar, which, as you can see, is a Gibson 335, and I've always wanted to own a 335 and recently had the opportunity to buy one. And the main reason I bought it is to play in this original band that I play in, called the Reg Cole Quartet. We play Latin style jazz, funk, popular, a bit of everything, a bit of soul. There is a singer, and I kind of divide my responsibilities between the nylon guitar and electric. So recently I've just been playing more of it, also getting into the improvising side of it. And an electric guitar will allow you to do so many other things range-wise, and there's a certain freedom in it, a certain sustain, a certain loudness, effects, which I also use. But today, because I've just bought this beautiful instrument, and it is a 1961 reissue custom shop, very beautiful handcrafted guitar that I can't stop playing because these guitars are so playable and also attractive. But just thought, having the fact that I've got it in my hands, I should turn on the camera and just play a few of my Latin tunes on it and just see what you guys think. I have a feeling, in fact, I'm more than sure that many of you do play electric guitar, and some of you would have jazz instruments. This is a kind of a jazz blues instrument, and there's a lot of YouTube channels that feature these guitars, and I actually did watch a lot of those channels just to understand the history of the Gibson guitars. I also have a Gibson 175, which you may or may not have seen. That's more of a jazz instrument. This is definitely going in the sort of rock, blues, jazz, funk direction, which is also one of the reasons why I wanted to get it, because I don't have an instrument like this. But it is extremely versatile instrument. So I just played at the intro there, was just the intro to Black Orpheus, Day in the Life of a Fool, originally the Brazilian Manhã de Carnaval, Morning of the Carnival. So I'll just play a little bit more of that just to see what you think about the interpretation on this instrument. So it does kind of work. It has a very Latin jazz sound. So you get this sustain. And if you hit it too hard, if the attack's too hard, you get more of a slap, which is great for blues. But does it work in Latin? Does it work in jazz? I think in a certain context it does. And it just has a different feel to it. It's a more liquidy sort of sound, less percussive, and you kind of want to hear a double bass and some brushes underneath, I think, or some congas. So that's what it leaves me feeling, is that it needs more percussion, because the nylon guitar is so percussive, whereas this is not a percussive instrument at all, and that's the beauty of it. You get that really silky legato sound, which a lot of guitarists like. Let's try something else, like Bésame Mucho. So again, similar to the Manhã de Carnaval, you get this really polished, silky sound. But of course, I think this style of electric comes into its own when you're playing accompaniment. So if we're doing something like Corcovado, that really kind of comes into its own, because you do get that that full rich accompaniment sound. One thing I would say is that you don't get percussive. You don't get that really percussive feel, which I think with certain of the more Spanish flamenco side of things, you're not really going to achieve any of that. You certainly can't really hit the guitar. I mean, you can sort of do some of that stuff, but it's not really a Latin sound. So if you were doing that kind of thing, which is very typical of the jazz version of Latin, then you definitely need something percussive underneath. One other thing you can do on an electric is flip between the pickups. So that was the bridge pickup, and if you're using the combined pickup, you might get a little bit more attack. So if you were doing something like Oblivion, so you get a little slight more twang, which is that a good thing? I think if you were doing a gig, you could definitely get away with playing something like that, but it becomes kind of background and a little bit less jazz, I think, in that middle pickup. And then obviously the bridge pickup, I think it's a bit too lead, bit too blues, a bit funk. So I think the proviso is that you stick to something in that kind of direction, and the fingers do give, especially like thumb work, will definitely give it that kind of jazzy sound. Now, using a pick will give you an even more jazz sound, but you can't sort of really apply the Latin fingerstyle principles. One thing I did notice is that when I was bringing the pick out and I'm playing fast notes, for example, Mediterranean Sundance, at the start where we had this really quick, I'm not sure if you're familiar with that one, played by Paco de Lucia and Al Di Meola and later John McLaughlin. Certainly that you can get that fast, much easier to get that speed on an instrument like this with a pick than on a nylon, which I will sometimes use a pick with. But I mucking around with it using a pick, and you get obviously a lot of beautiful tones, all of that stuff. But if you're trying to attempt some of those, much easier to get that speed, that flourish. I don't have to do very much, and it's all under the fingers. It's all very buttery and simple. So that neck and the action and the sound you get from the guitar and the amp really help you with that a lot. So that concludes my little demo of my new Gibson ES-335, and let me know what you guys think about playing Latin, especially Latin jazz on electric. Certainly not going to shift this channel or my playing entirely in that direction. It's just a little bit of a side gig that I have and a current interest, and I'm very much still in that Latin fingerstyle world and the classical world, but it's certainly just something extra that can bring new creativity. It can bring new ideas, and if I'm going to do some videos in the electric direction, we might even consider doing something like Santana, and you might have an artist that you like who plays in that style on electric. So that's it from me, and a hello from my new beautiful Gibson 335, and that's it from me for this week, and I'll see you guys next week.